Welcome to another episode of First Fridays with the FBI. First Fridays with the FBI is a citizen inspired and managed program to assist with crime awareness and prevention in our community. This podcast show is not endorsed by the FBI or any government entity. Today's guests are very special. They are not FBI agents. They will be sharing what they do with the FBI in the foreign language program. Did you know that you could possibly work for the FBI as a foreign language analyst? Tune in for more information. We're going to start with Carissa. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the questions.
Yes, so my name is Parissa Mohammadi, and I am the Supervisory Foreign Language Program Coordinator here in El Paso. Started off my career back in 2016 as a Farsi contract linguist. Did that for a few years before becoming a full-time FBI employee. I am half Mexican, half Iranian. I was born and raised in Iran. I moved to the US when I was 15. Yeah. That's pretty much me.
Okay. And Courtney, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning. My name is Courtney Bernal, and I also am a Supervisory Foreign Language Program Coordinator. I work in the Denver field office, and I actually started my career with the FBI several years ago here in Denver as a contract linguist. So I started as a contractor and then transferred actually to El Paso, and I worked there for a couple years, also as a contract linguist while I worked full-time with a different federal agency, and then transferred to the Minneapolis office of the FBI and started working as a supervisor in that office, and then had the opportunity to come back to Denver about 4 years ago to continue working as a supervisor in the foreign language program.
Okay. Well, thank you. And again, welcome. Thank you both for coming to talk to us about something a little different about the FBI that a lot of people may not have known. So Parissa, what is the FBI's foreign language program, and why is it so vital to the FBI?
Okay, so our foreign language program, it consists of FBI language analysts as well as independent contract linguists. Why they're so vital to the FBI is the fact that our language professionals, they specialize in translating written or audio materials. They help out these special agents out with interviews. They testify in trials. And most importantly, they provide cultural expertise, not only to the FBI, but to our counterpartners in the intelligence and law enforcement communities. And just to give you some stats, last year alone, our linguists reviewed and translated millions of foreign language materials, and they also provided over 22,000 hours of interpretation support, which is pretty great.
Okay. So who is in the program?
Our FBI linguists, they have a variety of degrees and impressive backgrounds in linguistics, engineering, education, finance, medicine, law enforcement, you call it. So some of them, they start their careers with us, and others come to us for their second or third careers. Some linguists also, they choose to work part-time for us while they go to school full-time or take care of their kids, parents, whatever they need to maintain a work-life balance.
So what is an FBI language analyst?
An FBI language analyst is a full-time permanent employee whose primary role is to provide language support to the FBI investigations and intelligence analysis. So these employees, they all have gone through the language proficiency process and background investigations. Therefore, they all they have the top secret clearance, just like any other FBI employee.
And I know it probably mentioned a little bit about what you do, but can you go a little bit more in depth about what you actually do as a language analyst?
As a language analyst, all linguists, they're assigned work based on their language they're authorized to support, as well as the score they get on the language proficiency exam. It's really hard to explain and describe a typical day for a linguist because we generally respond to whatever is happening operationally in our division, as well as the national level. I think, though, that's what makes it so much fun about this job, because every day is going to be something different. And that's one thing I really enjoyed when I was a linguist. I learned to work so many different threads, and you just, not only you're making a difference, but your job is just a lot of fun, and you're never going to be bored.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to be coming back to ask you a few more questions, but
Okay.
Courtney, can you give us an example of how language analysts support investigations?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that some of the most satisfying work that I've had in my career is from when I worked as a linguist. And I think, not every single day is chock full of nuggets of satisfaction, but it's one of those job roles where you definitely find the needle in the haystack, and you feel that satisfaction of helping put the pieces of the puzzle together for intelligence analysts and agents, and bridging a gap when they don't necessarily understand the language or the culture or the history or the geography, where linguists are able to piece that together. And an example that I have actually comes from Denver, where we were able to, in our Spanish language team, help basically from the inception of a case all the way through the sentencing of a really large case on our strike force, where there was a female drug pin or a drug queen, basically, who basically through a source who came to us and identified a drug connection. Basically, they started working the case, and it turned into a Title III investigation, which led to 8 federal search warrants and a large takedown in our AOR, over $120,000 in drug proceeds, lots of meth, heroin, rifles, cell phones, drug ledgers. And in that, there was over 3,000 hours of linguist support that was hands-on monitoring, and I would say about 1,500 hours of translation and trial preparation, and about 200 hours of on-site interpretation. So basically, the way that we support is through helping from the beginning of a case, when somebody just either calls the FBI or walks up to one of our buildings or reaches out to somebody and states that they have information about a case, or somebody that they think is suspicious in their neighborhood, or somebody that they know who they think is doing something. That's how we receive information, and one of our agents will start to act on that. And if they believe that there is a foreign language involved, that's when they contact somebody like Parissa or myself and say, hey, we need a linguist to speak with this source. And that's how the language program gets involved, because there may be more people who have foreign language requirements. And as the case evolves, there's more and more foreign language material. And if, for instance, they go on a search warrant and either the people in the home they believe speak a foreign language, or the material that they uncover is in a foreign language, obviously our linguists are involved in supporting that piece of the investigation. So at any point along the way, or in some cases such as this one, every point from the beginning when there was a person who came forward to provide information, all the way through the end, when the actual trial took place, or multiple trials, and the plea agreements and the sentencing, there were linguists involved all along the way. So that was a very successful case, but it's just one example of many where the linguists are involved every step of the way. And we really enjoy seeing those types of cases where we can see the fruits of our labor. And those are the ones where we go home every day saying we made an impact.
Right. Okay. I guess I wouldn't have really thought about it I haven't really thought about it when it comes to language and the FBI, but this makes me understand how it's all the more important. So thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you.
But what languages are in demand at the FBI?
That's a great question. And actually, that pretty much evolves a little bit with what's going on in the world, because as I'm sure you can imagine, the federal government has what they deem critical needs languages. So we don't jump around from language to language every year, but you'll see a consistent pattern based on what's happening in the world. So for instance, if you keep up with kind of the press releases and the recruiting that we've been doing over the past year for the FBI, we were pretty consistently seeking the Iraqi and Yemeni dialects of Arabic, Mandarin for Chinese, and with what was going on in Afghanistan, we were looking for Pashto and Persian Afghani, which is also known as Dari. We were looking for Somali and Ukrainian, of course, and there are other languages that have lower density that we're always looking for a few linguists. The best way to, I guess, find out what languages we're looking for in different areas is to reach out to the field office that's closest to you. We also have a posting that's generally open on FBIjobs.gov called the Language Talent Network. So anybody who is interested and is proficient in both English and a foreign language is always welcome to submit to create a profile on FBIjobs.gov and to create the profile and submit their interest to that language talent network. But basically anything that we deem a critical need is something that we will be consistently recruiting for.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my next question about how do you become an analyst? And like, are there specific locations where the language analysts are more needed than others?
That's another great question. And generally speaking, because our language program is considered a national program, the way that it works is supervisors like Parisa and myself work with our national language, our national program managers at headquarters. So linguists are a little bit different than some other job roles in the FBI, where we place linguists, generally speaking, where they apply. Generally speaking, they start as independent contract linguists who are self-employed. So we try to keep them in the place where they applied and go through the whole process in that field office where they are already living. And the workflow goes from the national program to them. We also have travel opportunities so that if a field office in a different location has a need for somebody in a language that they don't have in that field office, we have what we call temporary duty assignments, where we will canvass linguists in the whole FBI to see if somebody can support a specific operation in that field office, and contractors and employees are welcome to apply to that. So we do have 56 field offices where linguists can be seated, as well as our headquarters office. And then occasionally we do have openings in what we call our legat offices, which are our legal attaches, which are overseas offices.
And what is the hiring process for?
Another great question.
Yes.
Yes. So basically, as I mentioned, most of our linguists start as contract linguists. So generally speaking, that gives a linguist or somebody who has recently applied the opportunity to come to the FBI and see if it's a good fit. And it also gives the FBI to see if the person that we brought on as a contract linguist is a good fit for the FBI. So it gives us a chance to see the mutually beneficial fit between both the contract linguist and the FBI. And if that person is a good fit, then potentially there's the opportunity down the road for them to apply to become a permanent employee. And the process that they go through starts with speaking with somebody at the field office or going through that language talent network that I mentioned. And that is the primary point of contact for becoming an independent contract linguist. And if you'd like me to go through the process for the actual application, I can do that now.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, as I said, somebody would either go and speak with a representative at their field office, which would be somebody like me or Parisa, because we understand, the not only the application process, but the needs in not only our local office, but at the national level. So we would go through kind of a pre-screening process with anybody who contacts us, and we would explain the application process in more detail. And some of the things that we would discuss with that person is the requirements as far as eligibility for working with the FBI. And that would include things like being a U.S. citizen at the time of application, being a resident of the U.S. for at least 3 of the past 5 years, not having any felonies or defaulting on any federal loans, and being in compliance with the FBI's drug policy. Another thing that is a requirement for the independent contract linguist is being available to work for at least 20 hours a week. And one of the things that we would go over with that person is we don't actually guarantee any specific amount of work, and it varies depending on the language and the workload and the applicant's availability at the time that they are granted a contract. And we go over with them that they need to be proficient at a professional level in English and at least one foreign language that we deem a critical need at the FBI. One of the things that is different from some of the other job roles at the FBI for linguists is that we don't have an age limit, and that's one of the frequently asked questions that we get. So there is no age limit, there's no age requirement, and there's also no degree requirement. So we don't ask for a bachelor's, and there's no specific, like, you don't have to be, you don't have to have a bachelor's degree in linguistics or in your language or in anything specific. So no age limit, no age requirement, and no degree requirement. And the first starting point would be that application at FBIJobs.gov to the Language Talent Network. And that would trigger basically an application going to our team at headquarters. And they do an application review to make sure that it's a language that we need, and that they meet all of those eligibility requirements that I listed before about citizenship and all of those other things. And if all of those boxes are checked, then they would basically refer that person back to the field office to start the language testing process. And the language testing process is in 2 phases. The first phase for most languages is reading, listening, and a translation exam. So basically it's reading comprehension, listening comprehension, and translation from the foreign language into English. And basically just a point of mention is that we don't have study guides for that. So basically I would just say most people who are interested in taking our language testing battery should really be immersed in that foreign language and in English and feel very confident about their skills in both languages before they start the testing process. And if they pass that phase 1 testing, about 30 days later, they would be invited back to do the phase 2 testing, which generally in most languages consists of speaking proficiency testing. And that is 2 separate phone calls where they would go through scenarios in the foreign language and in English. And it's not an interpreting test, so they don't go back and forth between languages. It's 2 individual phone calls that usually last about 30 to 45 minutes. And again, it's not an interview, it's scenario based. So they need to be prepared to speak at a basically what we call kind of a level 3, or it's based on the the interagency language roundtable scores or scale. And basically what they would be doing is kind of starting at a lower level, kind of warming up and becoming more and more higher level as they go on, and speaking with fluency, with higher level register and language that demonstrates their language skills and their proficiency and their fluency and their ability to speak and engage at a level that shows their language skills. So that would be the speaking proficiency test. And if they pass that, that's considered passing the language battery. And if they pass that, like I said, the next step would then be the human resources associate from the field office would send to them an electronic questionnaire, an electronic security questionnaire called the Standard Form 86, which is a government-wide security questionnaire that has very in-depth questions that go back to where they've lived, where they've worked, where they've studied, their references, and it covers basically a lot of their personal information, their foreign contacts, and it would go over all of that information. They would fill it in online and submit that. And what that triggers basically is upon submission that would then have the human resources associate from the field office schedule an interview with a special agent from that office to go over that submission in person in the field office and make sure that everything that they submitted did covered any gaps and that everything that they submitted was accurate to the best of their knowledge, and that would prepare them for the next step, which is the polygraph. So the polygraph is something that, again, is done in person in the field office and make sure that everything that they've submitted in that form is truthful and accurate to the best of their knowledge. And I would say, I don't want to go in depth into that aspect of it, but it's something that I will just say that we all go through in the FBI. It's something that you don't want to research ahead of time, but just to understand that it's part of the application process. It's something that we all get nervous about. And even to this day, I've gone through many of them, I still get nervous about, but it's an aspect of employment with the FBI. And I know that the polygraphers do the best they can to keep our anxiety level down and to make it as easy on us as possible. But it's just a step that they go through to ensure that everybody understands the nature of our work, that it is national security information that we have access to, and they want to make sure that we understand that we're ready for and that we understand the level of access of information that we have. So once they pass the polygraph, then that starts the background investigation. And the background investigation is generally the piece that takes the longest for the process. And that's because all of the pieces of information that were submitted in the SF-86 that I mentioned, the security questionnaire, are all verified during that process. So many of our linguist applicants have lived overseas or were born overseas, and all of those pieces of information have to be verified, like where they worked, where they've lived, where they've studied. And that takes a lot of time and energy on the parts of all those different investigators who are putting together those pieces of information. So all in all, that process from start of the application to the end of the background investigation, when all of those pieces of information have been compiled, can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years. So this is a lengthy process. And again, it's because in the end, the applicant is receiving a top secret security clearance, and will end up being briefed into a top secret security clearance with the FBI. The last step of that process would be coming back into the office and meeting with the security officer and being briefed into their clearance and speaking with the SFLPC, like Harissa or myself, and starting their contract with the FBI. So that was a very long answer to your very simple question, but it's a very lengthy process, and it's very important to understand there is a lot involved. But basically, another piece of that is to understand that working with the FBI as a contract linguist or a linguist is in-office work. We don't do telework at this point. So again, the requirement is that, especially as a contract linguist, that they be available to work at least 20 hours per week.
Wow.
Wow is right. Yes.
Definitely. If anybody had any questions, they're all answered. But I'm not sure if I missed a part, but is there an age limit? Did you mention that?
There is not an age limit. I was trying to say that in the beginning, that there's no age requirement and there's no age limit, just like we do not have a degree requirement at all for the linguists.
Right. That's the part that really stood out for me, the not having to have a degree requirement. So I think that's when it comes to us, and we want to be able to help the FBI encourage people to consider, employment with the FBI. So I think that helps, and that's one of the things that we definitely want to include in our efforts to put out there, because I think that kind of hinders a lot of people who may not have a degree, but they have the experience. So
Absolutely.
this is good. So I have another question I want both of you to answer. So I'm gonna start with Carissa. What is it like working for the FBI and not as an agent?
So working for the FBI, it's a lot of fun. Every day is something different. You get to learn a lot from different peoples that come from different backgrounds and cultures. I think that's one thing I really enjoy about working for the FBI.
Okay. And Courtney?
I completely echo everything that Parisa said. And just to add on to that, I would say one of the aspects that drew me to the FBI and definitely keeps me at the FBI is that because of the fact that we are law enforcement and intelligence, the breadth of the work that we do means that we also have opportunities to do more. So in my role as a supervisor in the foreign language program, I've been able to work on, for instance, the FLIP, which is the foreign language incentive pay. I've been able to do working groups where I've been able to help with recruiting. And I've been active in recruiting both officially and unofficially for many years. So I've been able to work in technology working groups. I've been able to work in public affairs. I've been able to work in diversity and inclusion, and I'm currently on one of the committees. The neat thing about being in the FBI is there's no limit to what you can do. And the more you engage yourself and empower yourself to be a part of bigger and better things and look for opportunities, the more you can develop yourself and the more you can contribute. So I feel like the sky is the limit with the FBI, and the opportunities are always there. It's just a matter of asking or looking or volunteering. And I think that for me is one of the best aspects of being in an organization like the FBI. But again, I agree exactly with what Parisa said. One of the benefits of being specifically in the foreign language program is we are surrounded by different cultures and diversity, and no day in the foreign language program is ever boring or ever the same, because we also have the benefit of having our fingertips on every piece of operations and every type of investigation, because we touch everything from where we sit. And it's really great to be able to learn about the different investigations and the different ways in which the FBI engages, also in community relations up to cyber investigations and everywhere in between.
So for anyone who's interested in getting in contact with you to find out more about the program, how can they do that?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. So I actually have an email box that was previously on a press release from the Denver office from an event that we did. And that might be the easiest way to get in touch with any of us. I can just kind of spell it out. It's D as in dog, N as in Nancy, _ language at FBI.gov. So DN _ language at FBI.gov. And anybody from anywhere could send an email to that address. And if they include their resume and let me know what field office they're interested in, I could go ahead and forward it to the corresponding office for them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you all coming on here. And I rarely let anyone from the El Paso field office leave an interview without asking them. And you don't have to answer, but where's one place in El Paso that you think everyone should visit, whether it's a restaurant, a museum, or an area, when it comes to living here or just visiting here? What's the one spot?
One spot in El Paso, I would say Carlos and Mickey's. That's one of my favorite restaurants here, and they have the best margaritas. So
I would say the mountains, Franklin Mountains. I used to ride my bike there and absolutely loved it. I don't know. It's been a while. I haven't honestly been riding my bike up there. So I imagine traffic up there is more intense than it was, because I remember construction up there was quite a bit, but it's just beautiful up there. And I loved it. So that was one of my favorite spots.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for sharing a little bit more about the FBI and a part of the FBI that many people probably didn't know about or know that was really important. So I appreciate you coming on as our guest and hope to have you back.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Monica.
much for the opportunity. Really, this is great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.